Hey guys, Jarod, Parker Mountain Machine. We're out here at the range. Today, we're gonna go over a quick gear breakdown. All right guys, first thing I'm gonna go over today, my EDC. We'll pull the holster. I run a Tier 1 concealment Modern Samurai Project holster. It's universal and I love it because it gives me user configurability, meaning that all I really need to do is put a pistol with a Surefire X300 light into this holster and it's good to go. I also carry a small tourniquet tucked in between the clip here on the holster and the right side all the time. Pulling the pistol out of the holster, standard Glock 45. Up top, featuring Trijicon SRO, uses a 1 MOA dot. I prefer the 1 MOA dot because it allows me to dial down the illumination if we're doing some accuracy stuff. And then if I'm running quick and dirty, I can crank the illumination up for more aggressive sight picture. Down at the bottom, we got a ESD magwell. PMM actually manufactures these for ESD. Great guys to work with. Pleasure to work with them. So if you haven't checked these things out, I highly recommend it. Then we've got our new +3 base pads for the standard Glock mags in here. On the nose of the gun, Surefire X300 Turbo. And then of course the PMM Micro Comp and Barrel. So these are designed, as you know, if you've seen it on the videos before or what we have on the website, they fit seamlessly and integrate directly into the existing geometry of the pistol nose. So it gives you both the performance and the cosmetic appeal. It almost looks like a factory piece for the pistol. Pretty straightforward. No fancy cuts on this gun, just a gun that we had kicking around in the shop and I threw some regular stuff on it, off the shelf bolt-on parts that we can run with because it's a good item to showcase to potential clients that don't want to run a Gucci gun. They just want a factory out the gate Glock pistol and throw on all these extra accessories. Pretty straightforward. Moving on. SCAR SC, or more commonly known in the commercial market now would be the 15P. The main difference between this system and the 15P is obviously this is a machine gun. So it's a full auto gun. All NFA laws are applicable for this platform. So going over it, starting from butt to the muzzle. This is a special PDW style stock that we designed for the SC in conjunction with a project that we were working with the OEM at one time. And it utilizes a very, very small folding stock mechanism. Pretty slick, PDW, truck gun, whatever you want to call it. And I like to run it on here. Utilizes our standard cheek riser that you can find for the Kate Moss stocks or the Triangle stocks on the website with a variety of different heights. M-lock, so it's just, M-lock slots in there. Drop it on, it's good to go. Grip on this gun, standard Magpul Myad. We machine those at PMM to fit all the SCAR lowers, so you don't have to mess around with the polymer on the lower. I know there's a lot of guys out there that say, you can just Dremel down the lower and make it work. I've never advised that because it compromises the square nut that actually uses the M6 bolt in a compression manner to pull the grip up into the lower. And if you take material out of the actual lower, you run a high risk of actually fracturing the lower and then having to deal with sending that back to FN and replacing it. So we just machine the grips, it's plug and play. You can order a grip from us, throw it on the gun, you're good to go. Moving up, we got our standard safety selector levers. So these are the dimpled. I've always loved these, the design of these things, because when I'm mounting the gun and I'm ready to fire, I can come down with my thumb, not having to rely on my trigger finger to break my grip to put the gun into fire and then to bring it back to safe. In the event of a reload or whatever the case may dictate, my thumb can just pop it back up without actually having to break the grip on the gun, which is one of the great things about these things. I have a tendency of finding with other weapon systems, if I'm in the firing position and I have to use my trigger finger or actually this knuckle here on my trigger finger, if I have my grip established, I have to kind of break the grip and pop the hand up to do that. I've always preferred these safeties that we've made for this gun because it just allows me to manipulate the safety with my thumb, and then my trigger finger can do trigger finger things like pulling the trigger, for example, or utilizing our BCD, battery control device, on this gun with the SC. Gives me the ability to lock the bolt to the rear, status check the gun, or if I'm trying to run real quick mag changes, I can go to the mag, get the mag into the gun, support hand goes forward, trigger finger down, safety off, and then start shooting again. So for me personally, as a shooter, I like to relegate individual digits on my right hand to specific tasks. So the thumb is always dictating what the safety's doing, and then my trigger finger is doing what trigger finger stuff does. Index point on the oversized mag button that we offer here in the high ready or a safe position. Battery control device, like I said, can be used to lock the gun back, or if a new mag goes in, it just drops it. And then break shots. Moving up top, standard SIG Romeo 4T optic. I'm not much of a optic maniac. I like red dots. I prefer red dots over anything. Part of the reason is I'm getting old and my eyes are starting to fail. But straightforward, put the red dot on when I want to shoot and press the shot. Moving forward, we've got our SCAR SC M-LOK rails, a little easier to see on this side, or the 15P. They'll work on the 15P or the SC. So our M-LOK side rails, they're as thick as the standard HD versions, as well as our M-LOK lower rail. I run a mag pull vertical grip on this gun because when I'm presenting the gun, normally I'd like to use our meat hooks. I have them on some of our other SCARs, but there's not a whole lot of real estate on the front end of this weapon system, and with the suppressor off of it, I'm concerned about running the risk of blowing my fingers off. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail as I pop the can off. Up top, HRF Concepts, 3D printed polymer mod buttons. So I've got one that is at a 45-degree angle. On all my guns that I run, they're all set up exactly the same with my buttons. So forward 45-degree button's always my laser designator. And then the flat on the back is always the flashlight. The reason I do that personally is because we have the luxury of shooting under night vision a ton here in New Hampshire. And despite bouncing between different weapon systems, if I have similarity between the pads and the buttons on all the weapon systems, it allows me to just grab a different gun right off the shelf, and I know exactly where everything's at. So I don't have to think about, am I firing my flashlight? Am I firing my laser? Rolling it over on the right-hand side, got a mod light on here. It's a PLH V2, I guess is what the specific model is. Uses a standard mag pull 45-degree M-LOK Surefire Scout Light mount, hard mounted to the side. And then in conjunction with that, we've got a Wilcox Raid, and it sits on the right-hand side of the gun. Now you might be asking yourself, well, why do you have the laser mounted on the right side of the gun? Quick breakdown here on why I run my lasers on the side of most of my SCARs. The Raid is actually an exception over your standard PEC 15 or your Engel, and the reason I say it's an exception is from a shooting evaluation, it's always best to have your laser designator in the IR spectrum or the visible spectrum to be in line with the bore. The Raid Gen 1 Raids here, or I guess this will be a Gen 2, I'm not sure. The new X is something different, I haven't seen one. The visible laser as well as the IR laser are collimated together. And basically what that means is if I make an adjustment to the visible, it's going to move the IR one as well. And if you look at this laser in the camera, you can see that where the laser is projected from is directly down the bore axis. Now it's on the right side of the weapon system, so people might be going, okay, well, what about your windage? The equation that I have to balance out as the shooter is, with having this on the right side of the gun, it's directly in line with the bore of the weapon system. If I want to do an infinite zero, and if you don't know what that is, there's a million videos out there kind of go into it, but let's say, for example, this gun has been zeroed at 100 yards, okay? So I'll go out at dusk and I'll turn the laser on and I'm gonna look through my red dot optic and I'm gonna have one of my friends get on the laser with the adjustments and I'm going to slave these two to a converging point at 100 yards. And what that means for me in this application is if I'm putting my laser on a target at 100 yards, center mass, the laser is going to hit here, right? If I'm within that 100-yard range, the laser is going to be about 1.5 to 2 inches to the right. Drawing on an 8-inch circle on the upper thoracic, is that an acceptable hit? All day long. Furthermore, moving away from the 100-yard point, if we have a point of aim here at the middle at 100 yard where it's been slaved to, and we get out to like 200, 300 yards, I've now shifted the laser to this side of that point of impact, maybe 2 or 3 inches. Still fully acceptable within that 8-inch circle. And I don't actually have to count for bullet drop as much in this either. It's a short gun anyways, you know. I'm not shooting 400 meters with this thing consistently. But so that's part of the reason that I've always mounted my lasers on the side of the SCARs. This one in particular with the Raid is the best out of all the available options because, like I said, the laser designator is in the bore access, whether it be on the 12 o'clock position, ejection port side, or non-ejection port side, it's going to be on the bore axis. And then your impact is just going to shift left and right. Obviously, you still have to account for bullet drop, but that's a mechanical holdover that you can account for as a shooter on your own anyways and still make acceptable hits. So hopefully that clarifies part of the reason why I mounted this Raid on the right-hand side of the SCAR SC. Up front, we've got a Surefire 5.56 Mini. I'll go into a little bit of details on this. I haven't seen a 15P in the shop, fresh out of the box. We got this gun, I want to say maybe 3.5 years ago directly from FN. And what I ended up doing is I took a standard SFMB 5.56 muzzle brake and I machined off the second port on the front of it because I wanted to maintain this gun as a PDW or, you know, a small backpack style gun as much as possible, and the longer muzzle device just wasn't really conducive for what my personal objectives were for the gun. So I ended up lopping off the first port, and we got a single port on here. And then the other thing that I should really touch on is there's a custom machine shoulder ring here for this barrel, and what I ended up having to do is I measured the outer diameter of the barrel and the inner diameter, I should say the outer diameter of the SFMB where the shoulder's at, and then the inner diameter of the barrel, and made a custom machine sleeve. And what that allowed me to do is space out the muzzle device, so when either the suppressor is on the gun or the warden is on this gun, it gives me sufficient enough standoff space where I can actually mount it. If I didn't have that shoulder spacer on this weapon system, I wouldn't have actually been able to use suppressor or the warden in any capacity whatsoever. Going back to the other side, talk about our magwell. So this is just a standard SCAR 16, 15P, or SCAR SC PMM oversized magwell. If you haven't checked these out on the website, I'd definitely take a look at them. They're highly desirable for these platforms, in my personal opinion. The polymer lower doesn't have much of a magwell at all. And then we design our magwells in what we call like a clamshell configuration. There's a pin that holds it in the front. You can slide on the magwell, you clamp it on the back, you put a bolt through it, and then the funnel inside there seamlessly transitions up into the actual lower of the gun, and it makes mag changes quite a bit easier. Our oversized mag button. When I originally designed this part, I added a bit of a tail and I guess I would call this like an L on it, for lack of a better word right now. The reason I like this It's got a real good tactile feeling, and there's a lot more surface area. Once again, going back to the night vision equation, not having to rely on my eyes and just going off of the senses on the weapon system makes it a lot easier to run the gun quick and fast and make sure that I have positive control things. So if I'm indexing off of this, I can pretty much hit this mag button anywhere I need to get it to drop, and then I know that when I'm off the trigger, I can feel that nice tactile, grippy feeling of the serrations that we machine into the top of that thing. Yeah, so that's kind of the long form run of this gun. Everything that you see on this SCAR SC is something that you could do to your 15P. The only difference between this system as it currently stands right now is that this is an SC and they're not commercially available. Whereas the 15P is available. We do have some new exciting stuff coming down the road for the rear end of it, but I'm not going to go into great detail because I know that's going to do to my customer service guys. I don't want to cause any more unseen issues. Other point that I didn't talk on real quickly, our standard front QD mounts can work on these guns. However, on this one, I ended up using Scorpion, one of our Scorpion QD backers, because the geometry on the HK HASP carrier, or your standard, I don't know what the hell the other thing's called, where these bolt directly into, the geometry doesn't fit perfectly, but we had a solution that was already on the shelf for another weapon system, and it's been working out great. The rear QD on this is integrated into a one-off mount that we made specifically at one point in conjunction with the design of what you see from the stock back on this gun. Without going into great details, we do have some stuff coming down the road, giving our SCAR guys some options for running different stocks on the rear end of the weapon system, and it will use the Zytel or acetyl Zytel buffer in between here. If you guys have seen the SCAR gas jet video that I did on our YouTube channel, it goes into great detail about the pros and the cons of these platforms, more specifically targeting the Mark 17 or Mark 20 platform over the 16 or the 15P. But nonetheless, these polymer adapter plates between the rear receiver plate and the stock are a critical component for the weapon system, and it helps mitigate unwanted harmonics being transferred back into the operating system of the weapon that could cause long-term issues down the road. We will be offering these very, very shortly. So that's my breakdown of the PMM SCAR SC, or for you guys what would be the 15P. Hope you liked it.